Good morning. How's everybody doing? So good to see you all at day 3 of the program. I hope you all have been as inspired as I have been over the past 2 days. I've kind of been on, cloud 9 over the past few days. It's just been so incredible spending the past few days with you all. For those who I haven't met in the room, I'm Neal Piper, Executive Director at the Presidential Precinct. And at the Precinct, we have the opportunity to engage and inspire visionary leaders around the world through programs like the Global Leadership Forum, with the goal of finding effective solutions to problems and challenges around the world. And to date, we've hosted over 120 leaders, or leaders from over 120 countries, many more than 120 leaders from around the world, here in the birthplace of modern-day democracy. And over the past 2 days, we've heard from inspirational voices of leaders who have really just shattered glass ceilings around the world. We've talked about progress and challenges related to issues on health and education and economics and politics for women around the world. And throughout the next few days, the next 3 days, will be a little different. We're going to roll up our sleeves a little bit. We're going to come together, and we're going to share ideas amongst each other. And the next few days is really just designed for you, the change makers who are working on promoting gender equality and education, and helping girls have the opportunity to reach their full potential in their communities. And I'm excited about the next few days, and there's a few reasons that I'm really excited about what we're going to achieve together. First is talking about the power of ideas. New innovative ideas will be exchanged between you all, the remarkable leaders who are coming from 27 countries around the world. We've got leaders here who, their life's work is really ensuring girls have equal access to education. People who are inspiring girls to become the best version of themselves, to become leaders into their communities, and also working with boys, encouraging that boys embrace gender parity and understanding at an early age. And the theme of this year's Global Leadership Forum is promoting gender equality in education. And we've got a big task at hand. Bob's going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but today more than 98 million girls around the world are not in school today. That's a huge problem. And second, the reason I'm really excited about the next few days is the power of friendships. New friendships are going to be formed here because of the collective experience that you all are sharing here today. Because your passion, when you work together, has a resounding impact and can have ripple effects of hope and change in your communities. So regardless of where you're from, what you're working on, what really unites us is your passion, and your really your passion for making your communities a better place. And I think it's fitting that we're having these conversations here, where 3 U.S. founding fathers, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, built friendships, and they convened to talk about democracy, rights, and the role of citizens here in the United States. And Jefferson viewed education as instrumental for securing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And one of the first universities in America, which happens to be the University of Virginia, was established because of these 3 young visionary leaders. And so I ask all of you, 200 years from now, what will your country continue to gain because of the collective commitments that you're making here over the next 3 days? How will you carry this incredible responsibility of your education, your passion, and this program will instill in you? And from today's opening session through Friday's concluding pitch session, we'll take a deep dive in the roundtable conversations. We'll have plenary sessions. You'll be working around sharing ideas and solutions with one another. And so, without friendships at the precinct, none of this would be possible. And I want to thank three people who are in the room for making this program possible. Three important partners. One is a partnership with Tupperware Brands. Without them, this program simply wouldn't have taken place. Also, the Jefferson Trust, a commitment from the University of Virginia to invest in girls' education around the world, and the Robert and Molly Hardy Foundation. Without these three supporters, we wouldn't be able to come here today. So I really want to thank all of you for your support in making this program possible. And I couldn't think of a better person, a better voice to kick off this conversation than Bob Pianta, who is to my left, who is the Dean of the Curry School of Education and Professor of Psychology at the University of Virginia. Bob's research and policy interests focus on the measurement and production of effective teaching in classroom for preschool and high school. He's a nationally recognized expert both in early childhood education and K-12 teaching and learning. Bob regularly consults with federal agencies, foundations, and universities, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the William T. Grant Foundation, and the U.S. Department of Education and Health and Human Services. So it's my pleasure to have you here with us today, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neal. Welcome, everyone, or welcome back, or welcome to the continued effort to work collectively on what are really critical, important problems that women and girls face around the globe. And when women and girls face those problems, I think societies at large suffer those problems. So I think today, and as you go on over the course of the rest of the week, as Neal really inspired us, I think the collective energy and that you guys gather from your work together is going to be really important. So today's program was developed in partnership with two efforts of the Curry School of Education, our Youth Next Center on Positive Youth Development, and our Youth and Social Innovation undergraduate program. Both of those areas represent fundamental aspects of the Curry School's mission, which is really when one thinks about promoting aspects of equity in education and human development, then the identification and the elevation of assets in individuals and communities becomes the core element of an equity solution. And so for societies, we think to actually face the human capital challenges that they currently experience, it's that identification of assets and embracing of assets that is fundamentally important. Youth Next is the Curry School's transdisciplinary center on positive youth development, and it works in areas of research, training, and public service. The center's work is at the core about how youth assets are identified, cultivated, and expressed through a range of activities, including an effort around youth civic engagement, the redesign of educational opportunities for youth, and the role of mentoring and community service in youth, for youth. The Youth and Social Innovation major, which is a relatively new major at the Curry School, has this dual emphasis on rigorous academic preparation around youth development and policy and research, as well as embedding our students out into the community to actually do the work of youth development and innovation. Students learn how to evaluate social innovations for youth and develop them, how to collaborate with teams, and how to work in, as I say, in communities to implement and evaluate programs. I think Neal really set part of the tone for today in mentioning this enormous gender gap in the attendance of women and girls in schools. You look at breaking down the number that Neal cited, a stunning number, almost 100 million, if not more, of women and young girls not attending school. 23% of low-income countries have achieved gender parity, only 23 at a primary level, and only 15% at a secondary level. Those gaps are enormous. Whereas in developed countries, you see those percentages at 79% at gender equity in middle and high-income countries at the primary level, and 41% at the secondary level. Those gaps in opportunity, I think, are a sign of the tremendous shortchanging of talent, both for individuals and for communities and countries across the globe. And with the 5th sustainable goal, the development goal of the UN to achieve gender equality and empower women, the evidence is clear that that goal is a particularly salient one for the promotion of society's well-being and the individual's well-being as well. When we increase, the evidence is just striking about this, that when you increase the level of education among young women and girls in societies, you see growth in public health, you see growth in economies, you see growth in well-being, and you see the elevation of societies and in many places, the elevation of democracy. But the numbers are also kind of staggering. Those are big numbers, 100 million, if not more, in many, many countries across the globe. And so I think that's where we can both look into that challenge and say this is too big for any individual or for any team, even small team, to try to tackle. We're a big group, but we're not a huge group. And yet I'm struck by the power that exists, as Neal emphasized, in individuals' passion to make a difference, and then the collective energy and partnership that you can draw from here and bring back to your countries. So in some sense, the resource to face into those challenges is you, and it's you here and the work that you'll do today and over the course of the next couple of days. I think one of my experiences has been, as I've learned more about youth development as a result of our Center on Positive Youth Development and our Youth and Social Innovation major, and as you scan the capacities of youth to do important work in societies, I think there's every reason to be hopeful about what we can take from here and the work that can be done going forward. As we think particularly about this issue of women in education, there's another aspect of the work we're doing at the Curry School more globally, which might be of interest as well, which is a big part of our work has been also on how one creates effective educators in classrooms. So the development of educational systems in many developing countries is a really important aspect of how they're as a country, democracy and society is developing. And we've been working over a number of years on how one trains and cultivates a prepared teacher to enter those classrooms wherever they may be, and then under great variation of circumstances and conditions. And what we found, and we've been working not only throughout North America and the Caribbean, we've been in 7 countries in Latin America and Central America, 5 countries in the Middle East, and several countries throughout the Asian and Pacific region, doing work on preparing the relational capacities of teachers and the instructional capacities of teachers to engage the youth that they're involved with, and to carry this kind of emphasis on assets and cultivation of assets in the teaching that they do with students in the classroom. And what we've seen as we've done that work over and over now is that by elevating that capacity of the teacher, we find, in fact, that engages more of the students in the classrooms. It draws both young women and men, although it's an important factor for young women since most of the teachers are themselves women. And we see increased outcomes in terms of the students remaining in school for a longer period of time, and consequently their elevation on a range of kind of achievement and life outcomes. So I'm quite convinced that there is great territory and promise ahead to be realized in the work that you'll do. I'm absolutely convinced that the focus on education is the right one, and that if we approach this with a mindset that we're working with the assets of individuals and the assets of communities and the assets that exist in your own work together, and the promotion of those assets is our goal, then I'm quite convinced that we are going to be very, very successful. So with that in mind, I'd like to shift over to our next panelist here and welcome Lulu Haangala-Wood, who is here from Zambia, and she is also a Mandela Washington Fellow alumna, and I believe has already spent some time at UVA. So welcome, Lulu.
Thank you so much. As you heard, my name is Lulu, and I'm a proud alumni of the Presidential Precinct. I was part of the first cohort of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and it's an incredible honor to come back home. Besides being an alumni, I am the founder of an initiative called the We Keep Moving Initiative. I am also the UNAIDS Goodwill Ambassador for Zambia and a partner at a Pan-African creative agency called Dagon Media. For those of you that might not know my story, I didn't come from an advantaged background. I came from a family that was full of love. There was an abundance of love and care from my parents. But unfortunately, when I was born, they didn't have a good education at the time. We lived in a home that did not have access to water or electricity. My parents would be working in the field, and when I love to tell this story, and my mom loves to tell this story because she says whenever I'm a bit crazy, she understands that it's because while they were working in the fields, they would have to dig a hole, put a cloth, and leave me there, so she feels I ate a lot of ants and mud while they worked in the field. But from the age of 5, I worked to assist my family as my parents tried to get a better education. And at the age of 12, I worked for a family as a maid, and they gave me an opportunity also to get a higher quality of education. So I have seen my parents come from that, place in a little farm out of the city, and grow into working for big institutions, owning their own businesses because of the power of education. I've also seen what quality education did for me. I look at some of my friends that I left at the schools where I went to, and some of those that didn't have access to education, and see where they are today and look at where I am today, and I am grateful for the fact that I had access to good education. Following this, I've worked in television industry and radio. I've done some banking. I've worked in PR before actually founding Dagon Media. And over the years, I've realized that the greatest single impact I could make was to use my influence and my life story as an example to young women, to show them that the glass ceiling can be broken, paradigms can be shifted, ignorance blasted. So my mission as a businesswoman at Dagon Media is to help successful businesses build their brands through impact-based marketing, believing that if every business could transform their corporate social responsibility to conscious social responsibility, then we and they can make a huge difference in communities. My mission is also to help promote women in the workplace, and right now at Dagon Media, 60% of our workforce are women. And we also aim to create a generation of young, inspired, socially motivated people through projects like JUMP, which is an education, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle platform for one of our clients, our biggest client, which is Vodafone, Zambia, Uganda, Ghana, and Cameroon. And also through the Oxford Africa Society. And we believe we're starting to do this. We're starting to make an impact, and we're excited to see where the journey will take us. With the We Keep Moving initiative, I've spent the last 6 years talking to young women at schools, not just myself, but also bringing instrumental, inspirational icons, local icons that can tell their story and share how education has helped them get to where they are. We need to realize that our young people, no matter which country you come from, can also get inspiration from within. And so for me, especially for the continent from Africa, I really want to be able to push that African narrative and show young people that they are Africans who are inspirational, who are doing great things because they had access to education. As Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world. Girls' education isn't just a priority for the estimated 90 million young women who aren't in school. It's also a priority for anyone who wants a better world. An example from Zambia right now. The new constitutional requirement of a grade 12 requires a grade 12 certificate as a minimum requirement for any woman or man that wants to enter the democratic process. That leaves a lot of women out of the democratic process. Very few women then can run for office. And even besides that, very few women are able to just become voters because they do not understand what is on those papers. So the issues are real. Girls and women have the right to engage in the civil society, vote in elections, be elected to government offices, serve on boards, and make their voices heard in any process that will ultimately affect them, their families, and their communities. So investing in a woman's right to education is a necessary step in order to achieve gender equality and democratic governance. As we discuss gender equality the next few days and education, let's come up with real solutions. Real solutions that will make a difference, especially in the grassroots. I sometimes have issues with such meetings because sometimes we talk about it at that level and forget the real women, the real young girls in our communities and what their issues are. And I advise us also as we go back to our countries to get to know what the actual issues are. I'll give you an example. I got married recently, about a year ago, and I went through a traditional process that takes about 2 months of teaching for a young woman. I don't necessarily agree with it, but the reason I went through it is because 90% of the audience that I influence go through these teachings. So I wanted to understand what it is before I'm able to speak about it. So as leaders from all these different countries around the world, let us make an effort to truly understand our communities in order to come up with effective solutions for them. Thank you.